Super profundo on the early eve of your day. Thanks for joining me on Out of the Cave, where we reimagine what society can be if given a fresh start. I'm your host, JP Taxman, a designer, thinker, and realist, searching for the right questions to get the right answers to create a society that is better, not perfect. Before we get into it, I'd just like to do a quick marketing plug for myself. After listening to this episode, if you've enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you could share this episode with one friend you think might also enjoy it. Or if you're feeling generous, you could hop on over to Patreon and support me there at patreon.com/outofthecave. I'll share a link in the show notes. And I really have some cool rewards like getting to be a character in a story about the city actually working and operating, which you will get to be a main character in if you select that reward. And I will release those once a month after I get a few supporters. Anyhow, let's get into this audio essay as I help you take a little half step out of the cave. Let's give China some credit for innovating and using technology to move their society forward, or at least attempt to. However, is it for the right reasons? Probably not. And even though they are likely using it to just gain more control over their populace, the concept of tracking everything a person does, providing him that data and a score, and ranking them based on that score, could very well contribute to bettering people and creating a better society. Although here's a little more context to get you up to speed with what certain cities in China are doing right now and what they hope to roll out by 2020. Essentially, they are giving people a social credit score. Like a financial credit score, it can help you get things or it can prevent you from doing certain things in society. For instance, if you have a low credit score from doing things like being rude to people in public, littering, or not paying your bills, you could be barred from flying places, taking trains, or shopping at certain stores. They track a lot of these actions through the CCTV cameras in these cities, so there's nowhere to hide. Another ill side effect of this system is that there are social ramifications. If people you know and hang out with have a low score, that could affect your score. So this causes people to stop hanging out with or associating with certain people because that could bring their score down. On the other hand, if you have a good score, you get special access to certain business programs, upgraded seats for flights and train rides, but also get an increased social status. A big problem is no one really knows how the score is calculated, so everyone kind of lives and hopes they are doing the things that will bring up their score. They may have a general idea, but nothing is outlined for them. They just opt in on an app and boom, they're plugged into the system. That's it, life taken over. I think we can all agree this is a pretty dangerous system for business and government to be in cahoots over. But speaking of cahoots, a good kind of cahoots is Cahoots Co-working here in Phoenix, which is where I happen to be recording this podcast right now. Jenny and Odine are kick-ass and have created an amazing community with no social credit needed. Cahoots is where I record all of my podcasts, and I think you should check it out if you happen to be in the area. They're located in Midtown Phoenix, Arizona. Also, that was not a paid by any means sponsorship. I just love helping out people that are great. Anyhow, this type of system will definitely lead to tyranny and further class separation. If they made it easier for people to get their score and do a good rating, then it might actually be beneficial. But it doesn't seem like they do, or that there is any real education on how the system works. Could it, though? Could the system work to actually benefit the populace, individual, and overall society? I think if this system was meticulously planned and thought out when implemented in our new society, it might be able to actually aid the people living there over time. There are a few keys to doing this, though. First, it's vital that the system be designed to aid the betterment of each individual that uses it, not to gain control over that individual. The system in China definitely feels like it's there to control and manipulate in a negative way. Some manipulation is okay, but only if it's positive manipulation to better the person you're manipulating, not for the benefit of oneself or an organization, unless, of course, both benefit positively from the manipulation. Number 2, through the app, people should only be able to view their own score and data. And I want to emphasize the only. That information should not be shared with companies unless explicitly agreed to, and the individual should always have the option to revoke that permission. Along with that, it should never be shared with government or an overseeing body. When others can view a friend or acquaintance's score, then we run the risk of social exclusion, which is terrible for society and only fragments it more. I'll talk more about this in my third point. Anyhow, if government and business can have unlimited access to your score and ranking, then they can start making prejudices against you. That inevitably creates separation between the people and these organizations, which again further fragments society. And fragmenting society is definitely not what we want. We want autonomy, unity, cooperation, and togetherness. These are the concepts that move society forward and create an increased sense of well-being. So by allowing the individual to have access to their score, they can see how they stack up with themselves, or at the very least, an anonymized average, giving them the knowledge of where their strengths and weaknesses are, which will give them the power and the incentive to improve. Now, somewhere there needs to be a reward system built in to give people further incentive to better themselves. I would argue that it should be self-set. They should set their rewards and punishments based on what they feel comfortable with. I don't have the exact answer for this problem. It will definitely take rigorous testing and trial and error to figure it out. Now on to my third point. Scores shouldn't be affected by who you are associated with. By having your score associated with people you hang out with, that will keep the most unproductive members of society with the most unproductive, and the most productive with the most productive. This will increase 100-fold the difficulty to move up the ladder socially or financially. I very strongly believe that the ladder shouldn't necessarily be easy to climb, but it should be climbable, and people should have access to the ladder if they want to climb it or not. It should be their choice to move up and down layers of society. So we definitely don't want to make it impossible for people to move up in society. You want everyone to have a level playing ground, and they get to choose how to play, or if they even want to play. If one group of people has to play on a 45-degree angle field made out of concrete, while the other gets to play on a nice, freshly grown, flat lawn, that wouldn't necessarily bring our community together, would it? We would want to incentivize those with higher statuses to work to help those with worse scores and rankings move up to their level. Hey, maybe that solves my earlier problem. Maybe that's one of the best ways to increase your score and ranking is to help others improve theirs. Yes, this is now my fourth point. The system should heavily incentivize helpfulness. When people are constantly helping one another, everyone benefits. Society will flourish because if you win by helping someone else, both people significantly win out, and great things can and will be produced because of it. This is probably one of the ideas that is actually most feasible to bring to reality. However, I think one of the most important questions we should always ask ourselves when bringing ideas into reality isn't necessarily if we can, but rather if we should. If these Chinese companies and governments would have asked that question first, then it may have been possible to avoid a real-life Black Mirror scenario. But hopefully out of this scenario, hopefully out of what we learn from what they do, we will be able to create something better and more beneficial in the future.